Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Aiden here with another episode of Sales Freak, and I have the great honor of having Lee Salz with us. Lee, CEO of Sales Architects. And Lee, welcome.
Thank you. The honor is mine, Aiden.
Well, I really appreciate you doing the interview and doing a little bit of research on you. I have some a newfound respect for you, and I'll get into that in a second. It has nothing to do with sales. Has nothing to do with sales. But, I'm a big Seinfeld fan. You know the show Seinfeld?
Of course.
And there's an episode there where Kramer start trying to get out of a parking ticket. And so he goes on a big rant about he always wanted to be a banker because he grew up. He always wanted to be a banker.
Right.
And it was a bunch of BS to try to get out of his ticket. But the segue to that is most of us don't grow up and go, I want to be in sales. I want to be a sales trainer. So how did that happen? Tell us a little bit about growing up and how you kind of got into the sales profession.
So, Aiden, since you mentioned Kramer, I do have to say this to you. Giddy up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
hey,
a fantastic
I grew up
show.
in New York City. I've seen every episode of Seinfeld more times than I could care to even reference.
When you think about that show,
yeah,
they did everything. Close talker, man hands. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It was. And when you hear
my wife's
Larry
a low
David,
talker, Aiden. I tell her all the time, like, you're a low talker.
Yeah, low talk. Yeah. And then he's on the Jay Leno show. I heard that with the puffy shirt. Yeah, great show. And my kids are into it too, and the younger generations are getting into it too. So it's great. So how did you get started? You always wanted to be in sales?
I did not wake up one morning and say I want to be in sales.
Yeah.
It was an evolution. So my plan when I went to college was to go to law school. That was the game plan. While I was in college, I had a job. I was managing a hardcore gym. Fell in love with the fitness industry and decided to pursue a career in that world.
Okay.
So my first job, Aiden, out of college, I was the executive director of a 4 health club chain in upstate New York.
Oh, wow.
And the way that happened was there was a member in the gym that I was managing when I was an undergrad. And he comes up to me, he goes, when are you graduating? I said, oh, actually in May. He goes, well, we just loaned a bunch of money to some muscleheads. And they have these 4 health clubs and they haven't a clue. They need someone like you. Lo and behold, he connected me with them and I became the executive director of that chain of clubs. I worked there for a year and then I got recruited by Bally's, which at the time was the largest health club chain, to run a division of their company. And you ready for this, Aiden?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I was making big money. I was the youngest executive in Bally. I was 23, 24 years old, making $50,000.
And what year was that?
Let's see, when I was 23, 24 years old. So it was in right around 94, 95.
That's pretty good money.
Yeah, except that was Aiden. The problem was that was the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
And so very quickly I recognized, this whole fitness thing, great hobby, not great career. So even today, I still compete in powerlifting. But I said, you know what, I need to do something else for a career, but I really like this whole sales thing. So I left and went into the technology space and built some sales organizations there, moved into the HR services space, built some sales organizations there as well.
Well, that's interesting, and it's a great segue because when I said learn something about you was about powerlifting.
Yeah.
Which is neat. And just to give you a little segue, I have my best friend. He is into powerlifting. He's gone off to Texas to be taught. He's really into form and everything, and he had some health issues. I think you'll respect this. Okay. And he had a liver transplant last October the 14th, so just over a year ago. And on his 1-year anniversary, he made sure he squatted his best ever, which was deadlifted his best ever with 405.
Love it.
With a liver transplant.
It's fantastic.
Someone say you can't do nothing. I'm sitting there going, I'm like, oh, So anyhow, big respect to powerlifting, and it's something I'm slowly getting into because of my buddy's influence. But so okay, great. So one of the things that I really respect about you is all the accolades and all the work you've done. But one of the things that resonates with me is kind of your what separates you, and what separates you from a lot of others in the industry that I notice is I guess it's your passion, it's your message, it's about differentiation, and your books, your videos, all kind of lean towards that, and it's absolutely massive. So let's get into that a bit. But you have two books that you've written. One's called Sell Different, and one's called Sales Differentiation. Maybe talk us a little bit about those two books, how they're different, and why being different in selling is imperative in today's world.
Well, first of all, the subject of differentiation historically has been a marketing responsibility. Whenever I talk with executives and I talk about differentiation, their minds always go one place: marketing.
Yeah.
And they're not wrong. They're just limited in their belief. There's two types of differentiation. There's marketing differentiation and there's sales differentiation. And they're related, but they're also, dare I say, different. Marketing differentiation is one directional communication for the masses. It says, hey, look at us, we're here. It lays out all the potential of what could be. Sales differentiation is two-directional communication with an individual. Everyone buys for a different reason. And so what sales differentiation does, it takes all the potential of what could be and narrows it down to what should be for this individual in this circumstance. So there is a sales responsibility when we look at differentiation, and there's two sides to that. It's differentiating what you sell and differentiating how you sell.
Yeah.
So my book, Sales Differentiation, that came out in September of 2019, and it had two parts: how to differentiate what you sell and how to differentiate how you sell. In September of 21, my book, Sell Different, came out. I think it's this one.
Yeah.
Okay. And all strategies focused on differentiating how you sell to outsmart, outmaneuver, and outsell the competition. So the two books are related, but they're also standalone. But let me come back to your big question of what's different about my second book, Sell Different.
Yeah.
A lot of sales books I've found, and maybe you found the same thing, wonderful books, well written, but the only way you can implement any of what's in there is to hire the guy that wrote it. Part of the editing process with both books, as a matter of fact, was to make sure that if someone read this book, each chapter is dedicated to a strategy, that the reader could say, I got it and I can implement it without ever picking up the phone or sending me an email. Now you may say, boy, isn't that a limiting thing for your consulting practice? I don't think so. I haven't had any issues with my consulting practice or my speaking practice.
Yeah.
But putting my own sales hat on, it's always been a frustration when I would read a sales book, and then when I want to do something with what I've read, the only way I can do it is if I hire the individual that wrote it.
Well, and one of the problems with learning in general, right, is getting all this knowledge is, there's the old saying, knowledge is power, which is not true, right? It's applied knowledge. So taking that, and usually, like, I just took a course, I won't mention any names, and it was good information. I've got like 10 pages of information, but I don't know what to do with that information. I mean, yes, I can take a few things, but you get lost in all the information. You don't know where to start. So having a strategy, or as you say, talk about each chapter is an individual strategy. You don't need anyone to help you, guide you, or any consulting to do it. Is huge. Now, why did you choose to do and write it that way?
Because my theme is differentiating, and that certainly makes it different.
Yeah.
And to take it a step further, a lot of authors, when they write, they see it through the lens of what I want to tell everyone. I look at writing differently. I look at how can I help the reader address their challenges? And when I see it through that lens, I'm looking at each chapter from the perspective of, can this help them move the needle in their business, move the needle with their selling? And I'll tell you, it took a lot of rounds of editing to make sure that I achieved that objective. But that's one of the pieces of feedback I've continually received from readers is that, okay, I read the chapter on X, like the recap email, and you've got samples in there. You walk me step by step how to put it into practice. You've explained to me why this is something that would be beneficial to me. I can do it right now.
Yeah, that's huge because, like I said, it's easy to get lots of information, but actually having actionable steps that you can take to take you to there.
Let's take that a step further.
Yeah,
think about it from a sales perspective. So often we go into meetings and our plan is, here's what I want to get out of this.
Yeah.
How often do we think about the person on the other side of the desk and say to ourselves, for this to be a great use of their time, what would make this meeting beneficial? We don't think about that enough.
Yeah.
We come in with an egocentric approach saying, okay, here's my game plan. I'm going to come in. I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to tell them some stuff. I'm going to show them some things. I had a great meeting. It's almost like dating, right? When you're dating, what was the great date? I got to tell them all about me all night long. So you say it was a great date, and the person you went out with is going, what a nightmare. What an egocentric idiot.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it was, I remember, it's about being, I remember, back in the day, when I first started, Brian Tracy, and he talked about being really kind of changed the way I sold when he said, think of yourself as a doctor of selling. You don't just walk in the doctor, say, I got a pain, and they give you a pill, right? It doesn't matter what you go to the doctor for, sore throat. They just go through these steps and diagnose you properly. They don't have an assumption. They heard that you have a problem. Here's the pill. They expand that. They find out more information about what you're doing.
Correct, because they can be sued for malpractice. Unfortunately, in sales, you cannot be sued for sales malpractice. At least I don't think you can. Yeah. But it's just as bad of a crime when you come in and you just want to tell people, here's my solution. They buy it, and it turns out it was the wrong thing for them.
Yeah.
And why did that happen? Because you didn't take the time and discovery to uncover what truly was the right application for the circumstance.
Yeah, very well said. And I want to go back to that in a little bit. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, in your book, you take issue with a common contrast of salespeople with athletes.
I do.
What is that issue?
And so often, and you've heard that, right? Where salespeople are contrasted with athletes. Someone was talking to me earlier, and their manager was asking them, why do we need to do any type of this consulting or training work with these salespeople? Shouldn't they know it already? And the parallel is, whatever your favorite sport is, let's say it's football, given I see the Steelers behind you.
Yeah.
How many coaches are standing on the sideline on Sundays during an NFL game? These are pros. This is the creme de la creme of athletes.
Yeah.
So I can see why there's so many parallels, right? The statistical data, all that good stuff. But there's one difference between professional athletes and most salespeople. If you look at what a professional athlete does, they will work hours, days, weeks, months, years, perfecting their craft so that when they're in competition, they perform flawlessly.
Yeah.
And Nathan, what do most salespeople do? They play the game over and over again, hoping to be better the next time.
Yeah.
That difference right there completely invalidates putting salespeople and professional athletes in the same breath. But there is a distinction. There is an expression called a professional salesperson, and no one can give you that title. That's something that you earn. And you earn that by waking up every day and asking yourself, what is it that I can do today that'll make me more valuable, more meaningful to my prospects and clients tomorrow? Every single day, I don't care if it's a holiday, I don't care if it's a weekend. Ask yourself, challenge yourself, What can I do today to make myself more valuable and meaningful to prospects and clients tomorrow? And by watching this podcast, you got today done. So you got some ideas today, you're set. But what are you going to do tomorrow and the next day and the day after that? And if you're committed to doing that, then you get to put that word professional before salesperson.
I couldn't have said it better myself. There's a huge difference, and I talk about it a lot too, is, amateur versus professional. And I spent a lot of my time in my career as a manufacturer's rep, and I would get in a car with a lot of salespeople, and we would go make calls.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing to me the amount of people that basically were walking into an account, and I would stop and say, okay, what are we going to do here? What's the objective and stuff? Because if I didn't do that, they were basically just walking in, going to say, thinking to themselves, I can't wait to hear myself speak. Like, they didn't have a plan. They didn't have a strategy.
Right.
And that's where it's so important, being a professional, and part of being a professional is having a routine, right? A strategy, a thing you do and practice and do day in and day out. So what kind of things can sales professionals do to take themselves into that higher echelons? What are some of the things that you would say that they could do right now to start helping them make that move? Because there's going to be a lot of people are talking about some rainy days coming, financially and stuff. We're here about, Amazon $1 trillion loss and stuff. So there's going to be some hard times in the next few months. So we're going to have to be better. What are some things they can do?
There's an expression I like to use, sales rigor, meaning, and one of my CEO clients says it best. There's the business that happens to you and the business that you make happen. And we cloud that. So when times are great, when you have wonderful tailwinds, we give ourselves a little too much of a pat on the back and say, look at how fantastic I am. Then when it flips around and we start hitting some headwinds, we go, uh-oh, maybe something was helping me along with this.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations I'm having with executives today is they are looking out and they're going, boy, if that R word does happen, I want to be ready. And so we need to put some sales rigor in place. What do I mean by that? I'll use discovery as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we tell salespeople? We say, you got to go ask them some really good questions, thoughtful questions, insightful questions. You tell them about our differentiators. That's not enough. That's not enough. Rigor is we define what success looks like in a discovery meeting and put together a game plan to achieve it. These are the questions we need to be asking. This is the sequence of those questions. Here are the key message points we need to convey. Here's the journey that we need to take a prospect through that gives us the opportunity to demonstrate meaningful value so that we win more deals at the prices that we want. So we have these two opposites of being just telling them go do something versus giving them a game plan. Again, we'll come back to football. You sign on with the Steelers. What do you get when you sign on with the Steelers? A playbook that is this thick.
Yeah. And it's great. Just to digress for a quick sec, you've just given me $1 million idea.
Okay.
You talk about sales rigor. Well, all my friends call me the rigger, right? But growing up as buddies, so never even thought of it. I can be the sales rigger. Good.
I get 10%.
There you go. 10% of nothing, still nothing.
I agree.
Yeah, that's great. So, and you bring up a great, something I'm passionate about. In my career, I had probably 5, 6, 7 sales managers, and there's only really one was a teacher and really taught me. And I was lucky it was in the beginning because I might not have made it if it wasn't the first person I had. But you talk about, like a playbook, for me, coaching, being coached or what have you, learning and adapting. One of the things that are very critical to salespeople, and I think it's a lost art. And I want to kind of go into that as we head into the final portion of the interview here. Is, you know, a playbook. You talk about a playbook, but a big part of the playbook and a lost art is discovery.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about discovery, and how important is it, and why is it important? Because I think it's a lost art.
I'm going to disagree with you on that. I don't think it's a lost art. I think it's always been poorly defined. So what we've done is, so if you think of the polar opposites, there's being directive and prescriptive. In sales organizations that are directive, where we just say, get the meetings, ask them questions, tell them about our stuff, they're going to be in big trouble when things start getting a little tighter. The other end is prescriptive. Prescriptive is laying out a game plan on how you're going to do that. So when we talk about discovery, we know discovery is the foundation of the deal. If discovery is weak, the deal is weak. If you don't like your conversion rate at the end of the process, your problem is oftentimes not there. It's a symptom of the problem, which is coming all the way back to discovery. So it doesn't matter if you've got one salesperson on your team or thousands of salespeople. There is no reason to just say, go have some meetings, ask some good questions, thoughtful questions, insightful questions, and let us know how it went. Yeah. And it may sound like I'm being flippant, Dayton, but I'm not. This happens all the time. Now, the mega companies, the billion-dollar companies, they do have those playbooks. They have put sales rigor in place. That's how they got there. Yeah. The mid-sized companies, and then down to the smaller companies, they leave way too much to chance, and it's not necessary. They need to move that needle from being directive over towards prescriptive. And I'm not saying micromanage the salespeople. I'm not saying that you give them a script that they have to memorize verbatim. We have to go from this high level with the assumption that somewhere in their sales career, they learned how to handle discovery. And we can just rely on that and say, go have a discovery meeting, tell them about our stuff, ask some good questions. That's not enough. That's not enough. And where you're going to find that it's not enough is if that R word continues, we continue that direction, you're going to feel the pain when all of a sudden the deals just don't go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, what are your thoughts of, like, if someone's sitting there and they go, I'm not very good at discovery, or I need to be better at it, or, it's something I haven't really done good, or what have you. What are some of the starting points? Like they're not sure what to do. What are some of the questions they can ask, or what are some of the practices they can do to kind of, I'll give an example. When I first started in my career, I really didn't know about discovery. I'd get to a meeting and I really didn't know what to sell. I sold janitorial cleaning supplies. I didn't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And I would hope, and I would grab something, and I'd just be throwing spaghetti against the wall. And now and again, I'd get lucky, or someone would say, well, you know what? I actually need this. And they'd throw me a bone. But it wasn't until I learned the little acronym on spin selling back then: situation, problem. Oh, problem. And I could start asking problem questions, and I could start to realize that I could start to move things along by the questions I asked. What kind of tips, tricks do you have, or insights on helping someone become better at discovery?
Sure. So if you think what the traditional game plan is, we book a discovery meeting and we're getting ready for it. So what do? Let's come up with a list of questions we're going to ask and some key message points we want to share. Problem is, there's an infinite number of questions you could ask and only a certain subset that they're going to tolerate. And you can probably talk about your company and your solutions for 16 hours, but no one's granting you a 16-hour meeting. Yeah. So how do you decide which questions to ask and what information to share? Well, let's think of it in terms of a marathon. When we think in terms of questions to ask and information to share, we're at the finish line. What we need to do is we're at the starting line. We need to jump to the finish line. Imagine the meeting is over. It was a great discovery meeting if I accomplished what? Let's identify the outcomes, the criteria for success. I will have learned this information. I will have positioned this, etc. You'll have a list of these. And as a matter of fact, in Sell Different, there's a chapter that lists a lot of the common outcomes that we look for in discovery. And if you think of it in terms of a matrix, here are all the outcomes that I'm looking for in that left-hand column. Across the other columns, what am I going to ask? What am I going to say? And what am I going to do to achieve each one of those outcomes? So now, what questions am I going to ask during discovery? Only the ones that tie back to outcomes on my list. What information am I going to share? Only the information that ties back to the outcomes on my list. It's a very specific, finite project plan.
Love it. Love it. One of the last questions regarding discovery is, one of the things that really helped me is asking questions was huge. The other thing was just, what do you do with that time? And one of the things that really helped me move along, become more comfortable, was just asking for a facility tour or a walkthrough or something like that, and them showing you, and it actually allows you to start seeing if you know what you're looking for, right? You talk about, what are your thoughts on that? Is that a good practice? Is that something they should do, or when should they try to do that?
Well, that's one of the outcomes on your list. If you said a successful discovery meeting includes a tour of their facility, you should be checking that box, and then that's a component of that discovery conversation.
Love
so
it,
that's something that every salesperson has to decide for their own. And then I want to come back to something else when it comes to discovery, and I see this all the time. And I want to share it in the contrast of what I do as a hobby with powerlifting. I specifically compete in the bench press. Now, we've all seen the bench press in the gym, right? You lay down, you take the weight off, you press it, and that's the end of it. Have you ever seen a bench press competition, Aiden?
No, I haven't actually. You say that. Ask, yeah.
That's not how it works.
Okay.
Here's what happens. You lay down on the bench. At all times, your shoulders, your butt, and your feet must be static. And your feet have to be flat on the floor. If you start dancing around, the lift doesn't count. If your butt or your shoulders leave the pad, it doesn't count. Okay? And by the way, there are 3 referees positioned around you during this.
Okay.
They give you a lift off, and you have to stay in this locked out position until you get a start command. If you start before you get the command, it doesn't count, no matter how much you lifted. You bring it down to your chest, and it sits there until you get a press command. If you start early, it doesn't count. You bring it back up. You have to wait for a rack command before you can put it back. Now, there's a lot of finesse, a lot of moving parts with that.
Absolutely.
And you can imagine when I'm sitting there at 350 pounds over me, I can't be thinking about my feet, my shoulders, my arms, any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I have to just be focused on driving that weight. And I see a parallel in sales that we don't do enough prep work for those discovery meetings. So what do? We go in there thinking about what we're going to say and not spending enough time listening to what they're sharing with us. So what happens is, and I've seen this on the powerlifting side, they get the lift, the weight goes up, but they didn't do the steps properly, and they get 3 red lights. The lift doesn't count. The same thing for us in sales. If you're thinking about the steps you want to go through, you're going to miss the key part of the meeting, which is the information that they've shared with you. If you're worrying about, gosh, now what am I going to tell them about this? You're not listening to anything that they're telling you. And by the way, they're usually giving you the answer to how to sell the account.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. So as we wind down here, something I just thought of, I have a little pencil cup on my thing, and it's, coffee is for closers. And we're talking about discovery, and discovery is kind of, we're working towards the close. Now, little birdie told me that you take issue with the word closing. So as we close the segment here, pretty close, what's your issue with the word closing or the active closing when it comes to the sales process?
Well, there's several things. If we are truly partner-minded, meaning that we look to build relationships, I assure you no one woke up this morning and said, gosh, I hope someone closes me today. right? It's very one-sided when you see the world through that lens.
Yeah.
Here's a bigger issue. It communicates the wrong message to salespeople. Again, I'll use your football because I see you're a big Steelers fan.
Yeah.
We're spiking the ball in the end zone. We're done.
Yeah.
We're not done. We've
Well,
moved
we've
into the
begun.
next phase of the relationship. It's the opening, not the close. We're coming in because, look, we want referrals, upsells, cross-sells. We want to expand the account, expand the relationship. Closing has this sound of finality to it. What we want to do is be opening, looking at the next phase. So I don't use the word close.
Well, you got me thinking here. I've never thought of it that way. You're absolutely right. Closing has the implication of old school, right? Maybe I sold you one thing, I was never going to see you again, right?
Right.
I was never going to see you again. So I've never really thought of it like that. I know you've always heard you don't close customers, you open relationships, but that's a great analogy. Something to think about. So as we wind down here, tell us a little bit about your company, what you do, and how people can find you.
Sure. So my website is salesarchitects.com. It's plural, architects, salesarchitects.com. And I'm a sales management strategist. I'm not a sales trainer. I'm not the guy you bring in for 3 days to work on overcoming objections. The clients that bring me in are executives who say, there's a lot of opportunity out there and we're not getting our fair share. We need some help to figure out why we're not getting it and to put together the game plan to do exactly that.
Wow. And that's differentiating yourself compared to most too. Not everybody does that. There's a lot of sales training.
There is.
And training's great if you have the infrastructure to support it afterwards, right? So
absolutely,
you're more 40,000 foot view, looking at the processes and what they're doing and how you can help even make sales training successful.
Well, what happens, Aiden, I get these calls all the time that start with, we want to talk to you about doing some sales training. And then I start talking with them about the sales system that they have in place.
Yeah. And
they have nothing. And I'll share with them, not only would I not hire me, I wouldn't hire any sales trainer right now, because you have this vision that you're going to bring in someone for 3 days and some magic is going to happen.
Absolutely.
But you have no way of reinforcing what that individual is going to do. So my counsel to them is you need to establish what the game plan is for how to sell for your organization. And then you bring in training to reinforce that system. And they get it. When I explain that to them, they completely understand and say, oh, wow, yeah, I did have that dream. I spent 10 grand bringing someone in for a couple of days and all of a sudden I'm going to get 50 times the sales. That's just not going to happen. Not if you don't have the system in place that is being reinforced by the training.
Well, and it brings us right back to what we talked about at the very beginning. If you have 3 days of sales training is great. Don't get me wrong. You have all this information. It's now, what do I do with it? I believe it's like within 30 days, 80% of sales training is forgotten. Right?
Are you familiar with Hermann Ebbinghaus?
No, not overly. No.
Okay, you need to look him up. He was a German researcher back in the late 1800s, and he created something that is still valid today called the forgetting curve.
Okay.
What he found is that people forget half of what they learn within 24 hours and remember less than 10% a week later.
And that was before we had what we have now, the information. Right. People can't remember who won American Idol 6 months ago.
Correct.
Or the Super Bowl, because there's so much information. And I will definitely be studying that.
So let's think about this. We have a discovery meeting. It's an hour long.
Yeah.
A week later, they remember about 5 minutes of it. And in Sell Different, I actually present a strategy to combat that. It's a strategy that over 99.999% of salespeople don't do, but they should. So imagine, Aiden, you just had this discovery meeting, and it's one for the ages. You found pain, and they're ready to take action on it. You position your differentiators, they ate them up. You've got action items, they've got action items. This deal is so good you could taste it. As you head back to your car and you're thinking about this meeting, it plays in your head like your favorite movie, Caddyshack, because I knew you were going to ask me. Here's the flaw, Aiden. We think that they remember that meeting just as vividly as we do. It doesn't dawn on us that after our meeting, they had 7 other meetings, 100 emails, 16 voicemail messages, each one layering on top of our meeting, making it a distant memory.
Wow.
So the opportunity that 99.999% of salespeople miss out on is what I call the recap email. This is an email that you send the same day as your discovery meeting, and it has 5 components: your objectives, what they said they want to accomplish and why, and use their words that they shared during the meeting, how we can help, align your solution, what you can offer based on their objectives. What I said I was going to do, like my to-do list, your to-do list, and then what we agreed to do next steps, if you will. And there's a chapter in Sell Different that lays out exactly how to put this into practice. If you do this, some wonderful things happen. First of all, you differentiate yourself. There's no CRM on the planet that can write this for you. You're going to have to do it yourself. They know you're investing your time and you're showing genuine interest in the opportunity.
Yeah.
Number 2, it keeps your deal on track. Aiden, how many times have you had a first meeting with someone and they had action items, and then you come back for the second meeting, they go, oh, that's right, I was supposed to get this report and talk to Phil. I forgot.
Yeah.
Well, you reduce the likelihood of that happening by putting this in writing. The third thing that happens is we know in most B2B sales that a number of people are involved in the decision-making process. Well, we met with one. You write this in such a way it can be shared with others so they get just as excited as the individual that you met with. And then lastly, we combat what Herman Ebbinghaus discovered with the forgetting curve, because now we're putting some reinforcement information in their hands so that they don't have to have it all up here. They have it in writing from us. Very effective technique. And it's a perfect example of something that you can do. And I'm not asking you to spend 1 penny to put it into practice.
Well, to quote Seinfeld again, gold, Jerry, gold. That is gold, and that is something that you're right. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably pretty close. 99.999% of people don't.
I think it's higher. I'm yet to find a single
close to 100.
salesperson that says, yes, that is part of my selling strategy. Every time I have a discovery meeting, I send a recap email. Haven't found one yet.
Absolutely fantastic, Lee. And that's out of the book Sell Different?
It's right in this book.
Well, you know what? We've already gone over time, and it just flies by. We could sit here for an hour and a half, 2 hours probably, and just continue to learn from you. So people can find you at salesarchitectsplural.com. And you're also available on all social media.
Yep. And if they want to get a taste of Sell Different, if they go to selldifferentbook.com, you can download the first chapter free, either the audio version or the print version, whatever you like. And then if you decide to buy the book, wherever you buy it, come back to selldifferentbook.com and sign up for the video series. Every week for a year, you'll get an email with a link to a video to help you implement those strategies.
Wow. Well, that's worth the price of admission alone, right?
Absolutely. It's
Lee,
different.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, thank you very much. As I said, we could talk here for a long time. I love your points, and I will be definitely checking up the forgetting curve. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been honored to just learn from Lee here in the last 40 minutes. And Lee, I want to personally thank you for taking the time out to meet with me and the audience here and share your advice. It's invaluable. There's some really good stuff here, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Aiden. I'm going to head to the gym and go lift something heavy.
Well, once you said 350, I was thinking, I wonder what he does. 350. I was like, holy cow.
My best is 370.
And if you don't mind me asking, what's your body weight?
I'm right now about 210 and I'm 53 years old.
You're almost lifting double your body weight?
What's that?
You're almost lifting double your body weight.
Yes.
Wow. All right. Well, with that said, I'm heading to the gym.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Lee, thank you so much.
Thanks, Aiden. Take care.
Take care.